into my eyes. When you see me on a show, when you see these fans, you know you've got the best in the damn world.
This is the Wrestling Matters podcast where we stand up for professional wrestling.
Here we fucking go!
Well, enough is enough, and it's time for a change!
Professional wrestling! This is it! This is us standing up! Yes! 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 Yes!
That's 13-14!
Dina, I am the best in the world.
Cause that's the bottom line. Cause Stone Cold said so.
Oh, lovely people of the wrestling world, it's me, H-E-A-D, back with you for episode 132 of the Wrestling Matters podcast. How are we all doing? Hope you guys are well, and whatever it is you are doing, and it's going to be a little interesting this show today, because I got something for you. I got something special for you as well in this week's episode. So, today's show is we're going to talk Raw, Smackdown, NXT, TNA, and Ring of Honor. We're also going to talk about a few other things here and there as well. A few stories that have made the headlines this week, and I'm going to talk about one which I don't know what to make of, quite frankly. But anyway, also later on we're going to have part 3 of the Evren Orion interview. That's coming up later, and as well, I'm going to be talking about not ICW this week, guys. Although I will mention ICW because it's a very interesting show on there. That if I get the chance, I might talk about it actually during the podcast. We have to wait and see. Jimmy Havoc's Deathmatch Tournament presented by ICW. I will check it out, and if I don't do anything this episode, I'll talk about it next episode. I'll check it out and see what happens, see how things pan out. But the main priority of today's show, guys, and I'm saving for the main event, save the best till last, is Progress Wrestling. That's right, Progress Wrestling will make its debut on this podcast today. On this week's episode, guys. Episode 132, I will talk about Chapter 36 on this podcast, even if it kills me, because Chapter 36 was insane. Anyway, moving swiftly on. That is all to come. You can hear this podcast. I'm going to do the promotions now. You can hear this podcast on the Swerve Talk Network with Daz and Craig for the Max Wrestling, Offshoot Radio with James, Kinney with Sunday Segway, and yes, Evan McCabe's podcast is on there as well. Be sure to check it all out, guys. You know it makes sense. I don't need to tell you. And I'm on there last on a Monday at 9 o'clock UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Take it out, It makes sense. You know it does. Also, guys, check out Mystery Island. Flash Morgan Webster is coming at the back end of October, so be sure to check that out. Like I've said many times, guys. 56 to 58 Oxton Road in Birkenhead, Liverpool. If you're in the area, get yourself over there for more information on the Mystery Island team and the Mystery Island shop and their podcast and anything else Mystery Island. Check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/Back to the Island. Everything you need is on that page. Website, Twitters, any other information, who's coming here, who's coming there. Just get yourself over there. Also, ladies and gentlemen, a few things here and there as well to look out for in the podcast as well. You can listen to the podcast as well. Besides the Swerve Talk Network, you can listen to it on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/wrestling_matters_podcast. Be sure to download it for free if you can listen to it on SoundCloud itself. Be sure to download it for free. Also, check out the YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/wrestling/AJW Wrestling Matters, and subscribe if you're new, because there's plenty more stuff as well. And I've got a few things in the pipeline for that channel as well, but it's just having the time to do it and just a case of trying it out. And I will try it out, trust me. Also, ladies and gents, a few things to look out for on this podcast. Hopefully before long, I'll be having Michael Larkin back on. I will get some guests on very soon. I don't know what guests I'll get, but I'm sure there'll be a few people willing to come on the podcast. And if you ever want to come on the podcast, guys, at WM Podcast on Twitter or facebook.com/WM Podcast. If you want to come on the podcast and speak your mind. That's what this podcast is all about. Also, I've got a few interviews in the pipeline. One that will be recorded on the 23rd of October, I believe, as well. And I'll play that the following episode as well. So it's going to be a good month. It's going to be a good month, and I'm very much looking forward to that interview as well. More on that in future podcasts. Right, guys, I want to talk about one thing, and one thing only, in this part. There'll be a few other things that I want to talk about that will probably come to mind as well. And I'll talk about TNA and their situation with, buying and this, that, and the other as well. But I want to talk about Ric Flair. Nature Boy Ric Flair. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. But Nature Boy Ric Flair. Oh joy. Oh joy. That's right. Nature Boy Ric Flair. Just when you think you have seen it all. Apparently, you know how Ric Flair is. He's came across on his podcast and said he's openly admitted he slept with a numerous bunch of women in his time, obviously. It is what it is at the end of the day. He's Ric Flair, for crying out loud. But the one person he happened to mention and happened to bring up, the one name that he happened to mention was one Halle Berry, Hollywood actress and Oscar winner. Apparently, I think this was allegedly before he became famous. Or she became famous, rather. Yeah. Obviously, Halle Berry and her team, well, Halle, first of all, from what I've read, is very offended by that. And Halle Berry is very offended by that, apparently, and her team have openly made a statement saying that Halle doesn't recall this, and she's never met Ric Flair in her life. Hell, she didn't even know who Ric Flair was until they mentioned it. So, yeah, I don't know what the score is with this, guys, but good grief. The amount of stories you hear when you're a wrestling fan, or you come across, especially with Ric Flair at least, and allegedly saying that Halle Berry once took a ride on Space Mountain. God, Bennett. It's just, at the end of the day, it's typical Ric Flair getting involved in controversy, and if this is him trying to use Halle Berry's name to be relevant, which I'm not saying he's not relevant, but to be relevant, or even more relevant than he already is, then it's sad. But hopefully that's not the case. At the end of the day, guys, it just blows my mind. Absolutely just blows my mind how these stories can come out like this at the end of the day. And it's typical, like I said, it's typical Ric Flair. Typical Ric Flair, and quite frankly, he's probably slept with that many women. He's probably forgotten how many he's slept with, quite frankly. But Halle Berry's offended. I wonder if she's going to end up suing Ric Flair. They're going to take this to court, because I would probably say that's defamation of character. I'm no lawyer or solicitor or anything like that, but I'll probably say that's defamation of character. But at the end of the day, it's just crazy. And like I said, that's Ric Flair for you. Crazy. I will also talk about this later on in the podcast. Actually, I might talk about it last, actually. TNA. I'll be talking about TNA later on. And I'll be talking about TNA, what happened this week on TNA as well. But I want to mention or talk about one thing and one thing only that I read on the spoilers this week. And it's actually happened. Like I say, I'll talk about it more in depth later on. But I'll mention it now. TNA. Bobby Lashley, World Heavyweight Champion. He beat EC3 at Bound for Glory. How the fuck that happened, I don't know. Wrong man won. Should have been EC3, quite frankly. And then he comes out on Impact, and everybody has to defend their titles tonight, according to management. And Bobby Lashley handpicks Eddie Edwards, just so Eddie Edwards could lose, so he could destroy Eddie Edwards and walk out easy peasy. Didn't happen. Eddie Edwards is now the TNA Heavyweight Champion. World Heavyweight Champion. Am I surprised by this? No. Maybe this is desperations of them trying to get, ratings and that. I don't know what it is at the end of the day. One person said in the Solomonster group that I'm in, shout out to Solomonster, by the way. I'll be talking about you later on, sir. It's about the same situation where Chris Sabin won. You guys want to remember Chris Sabin winning the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. It's probably that same thing at the end of the day. All right, Chris Sabin cashed in his X Division title and ended up winning the title. But, yeah. I mean, I could see Eddie Edwards being world champion because he's been Ring of Honor world champion before. But, will it last? Because there's still all these rumors flying around that TNA is going to be going down. I have an update on it. I will give you it at the end of the towards the end of the show, and I'll talk about what Solomonster said about it as well later on. So at the end of the day, right now, TNA, as we see it, is on the verge of bound for bankruptcy. However, Eddie Edwards is the world champion. Quite frankly, it's amazing TNA still have a roster. to be fair, considering what's going down and that. And I'll talk about that more in depth later on with Solomonster's little podcast that I saw that I listened to this past week, which is absolutely epic and really, really good stuff. So I will talk about that more later on. Right, I'll end this part here. I'll be back in part 2 with Raw and Smackdown overall. Much better Monday Night Raw this week than last week. And SmackDown go into the pay-per-view, No Mercy. And you know what? We'll throw in No Mercy predictions as well in that part. That's right, I forgot about No Mercy, quite frankly. We'll throw in No Mercy predictions as well. This is recorded before No Mercy, so you know what happens on No Mercy. So, and yeah, I'll be reviewing that next week on the podcast. I will give my No Mercy predictions as well, along with the Raw and SmackDown review right after this, so stay tuned.
If you like the Wrestling Matters podcast, why not check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/WM podcast and like the page and show your support to the podcast that stands up for professional wrestling, the Wrestling Matters podcast. Wrestling Matters, wrestling fans.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Wrestling Matters podcast. Still a lot to get through in this podcast, guys, but let's do it. Raw, SmackDown, and you know what? We'll throw in predictions for No Mercy in here as well. But let's start with Raw and SmackDown first. A good Raw this week. Much better than last week's. I'll go through the quick hits. Lana asked US Champion Roman Reigns for a title match on Rusev's behalf, and is granted it. I'll get to that in a second. Brian Kendrick defeats WWE Cruiserweight Champion TJ Perkins, and probably will get another shot at the Cruiserweight title. Braun Strowman continues his development and demands better competition. Jericho challenged the New Day. Sami Zayn defeats Titus O'Neil. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson defeat the Golden Goof, Truth. I'll get to that in a second because I'm a little pissed off about that, to be honest. Enzo Amore and Big Cass introduce the Susan G. Komen breast cancer survivors. WWE Tag Team Champions, the New Day defeat Jericho. Tony Nese defeats Rich Swann, that's not easy to say. Cesaro and Sheamus continue their weird story as tag team. And Sasha Banks challenges Charlotte and becomes the new women's champion on Raw. At least. Raw is women's champion, so she's back in the saddle again. I'll get to that in a second as well. But I want to kick off with Lana and Rusev. As it says there, Lana comes out, challenges Roman Reigns on Rusev's behalf for a rematch. It all kicks off from there. Rusev comes out, they get into a brawl, kicks him over the barricade, Roman Reigns that is, and then is about to walk away with the United States title. That is until he turns around and gets clobbered by Roman Reigns with a Superman punch. And then Roman makes it clear, you want a US title match? You can have it. Inside Hell in a Cell. So, will that be cleared? We'll have to see this tonight, in fact, on Raw. Now, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. What the actual fuck are WWE doing is what I want to know. You got a tag team here that could dominate the tag team scene on Raw. Maybe in WWE. They could dominate them, right? I don't have a problem with them doing that because that's what they plan on doing. They're a serious tag team, and they're a tag team. If they were tag team champions, WWE, they could dominate your tag team division or wherever they're at. They go from challenging the New Day for the tag team belts to defeating Golden Truth on Raw. That's like them going from the top of the ladder. Yeah, we're going to the tag team titles. We're challenging the tag team champions. Right back down to the bottom again. Because let's face it, the Golden Truth, whether you like it or not, they're at the bottom of the ladder. There's no way anytime soon they'll be looking to get a tag team title shot, let alone be tag team champions. And if they could become tag team champions, God help them. You know, but it's at the end of the day, it's disgusting what WWE is doing with Gallows and Anderson. Gallows and Anderson, in my opinion, deserve better. The song says they came to conquer and divide. Well, they ain't conquering or dividing at the moment, and it sucks. And Sasha Banks challenges Charlotte in what was an epic main event. Credit the Raw for putting this as main event. And Sasha wins the women's title. And Sasha is now the boss. Again, no doubt we'll probably see these two go at it again at Hell in a Cell in the rematch. But Sasha's the champion. Let's hope she can keep it this time and have a long title run with it, because she deserves it. The queen is dead, long live the boss. And that about wraps that up for Raw. Those are the points that I wanted to talk about. And like I say, a very good Raw with a very good main event. You need to do that more often as well, WWE. Put the the women in the main event. I'm not going to talk about what happened with Ashton Kutcher and Co. and Jericho like that. I refuse to. But if you watch Raw, you know what happened. I refuse to even talk about that. Yeah, quite frankly, they had no business even being on the show. And the preview for Raw this week is the Boss is back in the spotlight. Question is, who's next for her? Will there be a rematch between her and what I call it, Charlotte? We'll have to wait and see. When it get cleared, we'll find out tonight on Raw, I guess. Smackdown's main talking points, all leading to yesterday's No Mercy pay-per-view. Kane defeats Bray Wyatt via countout. Alexa Bliss and Carmella defeat Becky Lynch and Nikki Bella. Daniel Bryan honored Susan G. Coleman. Not even going there with that one. The Hype Bros defeat the Vaudevillains. Miz TV presented a Dolphimentary, which is a look back on Dolph Ziggler's career and everything. That was until Miz actually brought out two members of the Spirit Squad, Kenny and Mikey, from the Spirit Squad to have a Spirit Squad reunion, or a Shit Squad reunion, as I used to call them. And yeah, it was all a trap though, because both members of the Spirit Squad attacked Dolph Ziggler while Miz got out of dodge. But Dolph managed to do what I'm sure he wanted to do a long time ago, and that's kick them both in the face with a super kick. So, yeah, just adds more fuel to the fire for the Intercontinental Championship. And like I say, guys, you know what happened in the Intercontinental title match. I will review No Mercy next week. Jason Jordan defeats Jey Uso. Jack Swagger defeats Baron Corbin. Randy Orton captured Bray Wyatt. And AJ Styles and John Cena and Dean Ambrose have a brawl in a face-off, which ended the match, which all led to the main event. And John Cena made a statement, but AJ Styles had the last word as well on that one as well. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all leading to what is going to happen or what happened at No Mercy. And yeah, a good SmackDown. Like I say, SmackDown and Raw, in my opinion, are edging it out. SmackDown's edging it out against Raw at the moment, in my opinion. I know the Raw fans, if you like Raw better than SmackDown, I know you guys will probably disagree with that, but hey, it's the truth, and ratings don't lie. Now for the predictions for the pay-per-view. My predictions for the pay-per-view of No Mercy. There is 2, 4, 6, 7 matches altogether. 6 on the show, 1 in the kickoff show. Jack Swagger and Baron Corbin. I would probably say Baron Corbin will get a win on this one, guys. Well, Jack beat him on SmackDown, so I would imagine Baron to go over on this one. Yeah, I'm picking Baron Corbin on that, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Baron Corbin's my pick. Nikki Bella finally gets her hands on Carmella and will get her revenge. I'm picking Nikki in that one. SmackDown Women's Championship, Becky Lynch and Alexa Bliss. Becky to retain on that one. That's a no-brainer on that. And Alexia's done well to get to the spot where she's at now, but it's still too early for Becky to lose the title. SmackDown Tag Team titles, the Cinderella story continues, and I would imagine Jason Jordan and Chad Gable will probably end up costing the Usos the championships, in my opinion. I think I can see that happening, but either way, the Cinderella story will continue, and Heath Slater and Rhino will be the SmackDown Tag Team champions. Intercontinental champion Miz defends against Dolph Ziggler, and if Ziggler loses, he will retire. Surely Ziggler wins this. Ziggler will be the Intercontinental Champion. If Ziggler loses, he must retire. He will not retire. Ziggler will be the Intercontinental Champion coming out of this match, and it'll be the end of Miz's never-ending tour, as he called it. But yeah, Dolph to win that one. Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. Hopefully we'll get a match this time around, unlike what happened at Backlash. And hopefully Orton's recovered from the beating that he took at Brock Lesnar. I want to say Bray Wyatt, but I don't see it happening. When was the last time Bray Wyatt won a pay-per-view match? I'll tell you when it happened. I believe it was the series he had with Chris Jericho, and that was last year. Yeah, go figure. This poor bastard can't get a break, and as much as I want to say Bray Wyatt, I have a feeling Randy Orton will win. If Bray wins, I will not be disappointed, but I can't see it happening on that one. And hands down pick, WWE World Champion AJ Styles will retain against Dean Ambrose and John Cena, considering what rumours, if you believe the rumours that you've heard, that these two are going to be out for the time being after this pay-per-view, and it'll be Randy Orton. And I reported it last week's episode, which I'll get to in a second. Actually, I want to thank you guys on something. but it'll be Randy Orton and AJ Styles for the WWE title going into Survivor Series, I would have guessed. And speaking of last week's episode, guys, last week's episode on YouTube last week's episode of the podcast got 111 views in a space of 2 days. I uploaded it early hours of Monday morning UK time, which was about 8 o'clock Sunday Eastern time in the USA, and it got over 100 views in a space of 2 days. And I thank you for that, guys. I really do. I thank you for that as well. Hopefully you'll get this one up there as well. But all in all, guys, I do appreciate it very much indeed. And with that being said, guys, that is the end of part 2. Hope you guys have enjoyed this part. And I'll be back in part 3 with NXT, Ring of Honor, and TNA. Or what's left of it. And still to come as well, my reaction to Solomonster's little podcast thing on TNA as well. Or as he called it, Bound For Bankruptcy. All of that still to come on this podcast. Stay tuned.
There's only one wrestling podcast that gives you honest, uncut opinions and the most unique trivia since WWE did The Weakest Link. And the only place you can hear the show-stealing podcast promo every single week.
Covering WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, Lucha Underground. Max Wrestling Podcast is the place for you. Join myself, Evan Money Michaela, The Phoenix, and The Butcher. Sundays at 7 PM UK time, 2 PM Eastern time with your host, Danny Dangerously, on VOC Nation and the Swerve Talk Network.
Go to maxwrestling.wix.com/maxwrestling or follow us at maxwrestlinguk for more details.
Give in to the madness.
Be sure to check out the Wrestling Matters channel at www.youtube.com/AJW Wrestling Matters for my exclusive review series that I'm doing on WCPW, What Culture Pro Wrestling, brought to you by the good folks at WhatCulture.com. Each and every week, I'll be reviewing their shows, whether it's loaded or their big upcoming shows as well, each and every week on their YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the Wrestling Matters channel for review shows each and every week. You can also download them for free on SoundCloud. Wrestling Matters, wrestling fans. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to part 3 of the Wrestling Matters podcast, and now it is time for NXT, TNA, and Ring of Honor. First, we'll kick off with NXT, and it's all the NXT Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. 2 first-round matches are in this episode. Also, Samoa Joe interrupted Dan Martha's debut by attacking him. Peyton Royce defeated Danielle Camella. I hope I said that right. Rich Swann and Patrick Clark went one-on-one, and Rich Swann gets the win. The Authors of Pain defeat the Bollywood Boys in the first round of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. And in the main event, the Revival defeat Cedric Alexandra and Andre Cien Almas. And Almas attacks Alexandra after the match as well. So I'm guessing there's a feud between them two down the road as well. So on to, with that said, very good NXT show, and let's go to Ring of Honor. For the next 2 weeks on Ring of Honor, there's going to be a tag team. It's matches from the Field of Honor event, and I had a main event with the Bullet Club. Bullet Club, Young Bucks, Page, and Takahashi took on the Machine Guns, Leo Rush, and ACH. More on that later. First, it kicked off with Evil, one of the guys who turned on Jay Lethal, took on Bobby Fish for the TV title in what was a great TV title match. Counters, wrestling, just really, really good stuff. Good to watch. A lot of fun, and a lot of fun if you're a pure wrestling fan. And Bobby Fish manages to retain with a submission by making Evil tap out. Who can stop this guy? Who can stop this guy? You got Bobby Fish as the TV champion. Before long, you may very well get Kyle O'Reilly as the World Heavyweight Champion. You know, it is what it is at the end of the day, guys. It's just great stuff. The IWGP Intercontinental Championship was up for grabs. Donovan Dijak challenging Michael Elgin in what was a very good, strong, physical match. And Dijak put up an awesome fight against Michael Elgin. Great stuff to watch.
Dijak even had him beat on occasions, very close to winning the Intercontinental title, but Elgin proved too much and manages to retain the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. Great matches. Great match. And it kicked off and it ended with Bullet Club, Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and Takahashi took on the Motor City Machine Guns, Lio Rush, and ACH. Back and forth, action-packed main event, as you would expect from an 8-man tag. And even one of the Young Bucks turned around to the camera and said, boy, that was a workout. Because it looked a workout. You got ACH doing his high jump dive, Young Bucks doing his super kicks, the super kick routine. It was just good stuff. And then the Bullet Club eventually managed to get the victory. 5-star main event in what was a 5-star show, basically. And I can't wait to see what happens next week. I don't know if they could top this, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Young Bucks, who are now Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just great stuff. It was great stuff to watch. Now, let's get to TNA. A very shocking TNA. I said a little bit of it at the beginning of the show. Eddie Edwards is the World Heavyweight Champion. And like I said, it all came about because they wanted Bobby Lashley to defend the belt. They all wanted him to defend the belt. And he handpicked Eddie Edwards to win, expecting to beat Eddie Edwards cleanly. No problem, easy night for Bobby Lashley, but it backfired on him. And Eddie Edwards is now the World Heavyweight Champion. I would probably say that is a last resort, in my opinion. And it's just my opinion, for them to, get noticed, if you will. Also, Cody Rhodes made his debut. I will get to that in a second as well. Yeah, I mean, it comes like a last resort at the end of the day. I mean, it seems that TNA, butt kicking, clawing, scratching. I mean, there's rumors flying around that TNA has won. This is, they've reportedly sold the rights to WWE for the library, but apparently Billy Corgan's going to take over and rebrand the whole product, if you will. And yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Matches were X Division Team X Gold match. X Division champion DJZ, Mandrews, and Braxton Sutter. I can't believe Mandrews is still there. Versus the the Caveman, let's just say that. Trevor Lee, Andrew Everett, and Rocket. Marshane Rocket. I hope I've said that right. If I didn't, I apologise, but I know I didn't. Yeah, and the winners of that match were Team DJZ by pinfall. Mandrews hitting the shooting star press. The next one was Eli Drake's little segment as well. The other match was TNA Knockouts Championship match. Sienna with Ali challenging Gail Kim. And Gail Kim won by roll-up. Sienna attacks Gail Kim after the match, and then Maria sticks her beacon and all that. Yeah. The World Tag Team Championships were up next as well. Wolf Creek and Decay. The House Hardy, as they call Broken Hardys, take on Decay, and this was just sick. Insane match, and the winners and still your TNA World Tag Team Champions, the Hardys. Fire Escape. Aaron Rex defeats Baron Dax, well, that's a mouthful, in the TNA Grand Championship match, and he retains, I would guess, yep, by submission. So Aaron Rex is still your TNA Grand Championship match. Grand Champion, even, rather. I still don't get that belt, to be honest. TNA World Heavyweight Champion, like I say, Bobby Lashley challenges Eddie Edwards, or is challenged by Eddie Edwards, and the plan that Bobby Lashley had backfired on him. So the quick results were Team X Gold, Team DJZ, DJZ, Braxton Sutter, and Mandrews defeat Helm's Destiny, Trevor Lee, Andrew Evans, and Rocket. Gail Kim, Sienna beats Sienna to retain the Knockouts title. House Hardy retain the tag titles. Aaron Rex retains the Impact Grand Championship. And Eddie Edwards becomes the new TNA Heavyweight Champion of the world. Gail Kim puts a next week's show, sees Cody Rhodes and the Miracle Mike Bennett go one-on-one, which is what Cody wanted. And after Cody punked Mike Bennett out basically said, well, why don't we fight now? Better turn around before you rudely interrupt me, and then Cody interrupts him again with a right hand, and then it's all going to lead to next week. This is what Cody wanted. And Gail Kim puts her Knockouts Championship on the line against Maria Kanellis, leadership of the Knockouts division as well. So it's a no disqualification match. Gail Kim puts the Knockouts Championship on the line against Maria Kanellis' leadership of the Knockouts division. Winner takes all. And who will win? We'll have to find out this coming week on TNA. And there you have it, guys. That about wraps it up. I'll talk about TNA more later on in the show. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of part 3 of the Wrestling Matters podcast. I'll be back in part 4 with a mention of ICW as well. Possibly the review. I don't know yet. I don't know. I might save the review to next week, because I usually save this spot for the thing. Progress Wrestling still to come on the podcast, and I'll be back in part 4. So whatever happens, happens. So I'll see you in a bit. Still to come also, Solomonsters, my reaction to Solomonsters' little podcast thing on TNA as well. Plus part 3 of Evren Orion. So stay tuned.
Be sure to listen to the Sunday Segway Wrestling Podcast.
What?
Every Sunday with Kenny Killer and the Galdem Sugar Shubs.
Yes! Yes!
With all the news, views, and laughter that you want.
They like jet airplanes. Woo! They like long limousines.
Every Sunday, the Sunday Segway Wrestling Podcast on Podomatic, iTunes, and YouTube.
So why don't you choke on that, slap nut?
If you like the Wrestling Matters Podcast, why not follow the Wrestling Matters Podcast now on Twitter at WM Podcast for all professional wrestling news. Wrestling Matters, wrestling fans.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to part 4 of the Wrestling Matters Podcast, and now it is time. It's time for a What Culture Top 10. Before we get into part 5, which will be the Progress Wrestling segment, as well as ICW. I might as well mention ICW in here as well. Next week on this podcast, I will review the Jimmy Havoc Tournament of Death that they had on ICW's on-demand service. Go and watch it. It is on the ICW on-demand service. You can subscribe and sign up. You can see it for yourself. It's got Chris Renfrew in. It's got all sorts of people in there as well. All in honor of the one and only Jimmy Havoc. So, yeah, go and check it out, guys. And I'll watch it this week. And I'll review it next week on the podcast. So, with that being said, I found this on YouTube, on the What Culture Wrestling YouTube channel, and it was the 10 greatest Intercontinental champions of all time. Yes, you heard me correct, ladies and gents. 10 greatest Intercontinental champions of all time, at least according to What Culture. So, yeah, let's get into it. Number 10 was the Honky Tonk Man. Wrestling terms, as a wrestler, because we all know the Intercontinental Champion back then was the Workhorse title. But in terms of wrestling, no. I'd probably think not. However, he's probably on this for one reason and one reason alone. The amount of time, or the longest time, that he had the Intercontinental Championship. He had it for about 2 years at the most. Which made him losing it to the Ultimate Warrior in 31 seconds at SummerSlam 88 all extra more special, if you will. But he did some good things with it. He did all the best things you can do with it, but he did some good things with it. Number 9, believe it or not, is Santino Marella. Now, I don't agree with this one. I know you probably think to yourself, what? What's he doing in there? And I agree with you. But Santino was probably in there for what he did for it first time around. The first time around, he lost it to William Regal. The second time, he had the hunky meter. Yeah. And we all know how he won the Intercontinental Championship to begin with, was in Milan when he beat Umaga, thanks to a little help from Bobby Lashley. So, yeah, we all remember the honky meter, and eventually ended up, like I say, losing it to William Regal. Thank God. Number 8 was a guy we're all familiar with, very familiar with as well, Mr. Pat Patterson, the very first Intercontinental Champion. The story was he won the title in Rio de Janeiro. Wrong. He was handed the belt. But he set the tone for what an Intercontinental Champion should be. And did a good job, too. You know, the feud with Sergeant Slaughter he had. I don't know if he was champion at that point. But he was a great Intercontinental Champion, nevertheless. And did a good job as well. with it, and like I say, set the bar for what a champion should be. Even Vince McMahon liked that, which was something. And he was also managed at the time by the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Number 7 was Pedro Morales. Now, he did good in terms of, you know, the defenses he had, because he had a lot of great matches, great feuds with superstar Billy Graham and various other people as well. I mean, he had a good run with it, a very good run with it. Like I say, he had feuds with Billy Graham and other people like that as well. And I think Don Morocco was one of them. Yep, Don Morocco was one as well. The Rock, the original Rock, as people call him, as well. And yeah, he did a good job. Number 6 was probably, in my era at least, the best Intercontinental Champion of all time. The one, the only, Mr. Perfect. Now, I have a bit of an issue with this, because it says on the video, and I'll put the video in the description below, it says on the video that he won the Intercontinental Championship in a tournament, which he did. He beat Tito Santana for it, with a little help from Bobby Heenan. And then lost it to Texas Tornado at SummerSlam 90, which he did. But they say he got it back at Survivor Series. Wrong. He didn't do that. He got it back on a Superstar show, on a version of Superstars, I believe it was. Either that was something for Coliseum Video. It was one or the other, because I remember it well, because DiBiase was ring announcer, $1 Million Man was ring announcer, and helped him basically retain the title. And that led to a feud with him and Texas Tornado for down the road. Perfect was Intercontinental Champion because he could have a great match with anybody. Even Big Boss Man at WrestleMania, for crying out loud. So, yeah, I mean, probably one, if not the best Intercontinental Champions of all time. And we all know how that ended because of Bret Hart at SummerSlam 91 in what was probably one of my favourite matches of all time. And it was my very first pay-per-view as well, of that era, of my generation as well. Next one was Steve Austin. Now, Steve Austin used his title to get to the World Championship, which is a foregone conclusion. I mean, he won it at Survivor Series after having his neck broken, at SummerSlam rather, after his neck was broken. Had to forfeit it, raised all sorts of hell between that month. Leading into Survivor Series, he ended up getting the belt back from Owen, who won it back at Bad Blood, thanks to Austin. But Austin did it because he wanted the match with him at Survivor Series to get the belt back. He got the belt back. All led into D-Generation X In Your House with the first feud that him and The Rock ever had over that championship. And then he hands it in the next night and goes for the WWE title. And we all know how that turned out at WrestleMania 14. Wins the Rumble, gets the belt. Simple as that. So, the Intercontinental Championship did wonders for him. And there was that famous moment where he threw the belt in the river as well. You know, same Stone Cold time, same Stone Cold channel, and throws it in the river. Next one is Shawn Michaels. Talk about a workhorse. This guy was, I believe, a 3-time Intercontinental Champion, and definitely used that belt to elevate him to where he wanted to be. You know, we all know what happened with him splitting from Mike Jannetty on the barbershop, but he definitely got that championship from British Bulldog the first time around and took it and ran with it, quite frankly. There was a few other bits as well, even him, you know, getting suspended that one time, all leading into WrestleMania 10 with him and Razor Ramon. Title for title, Intercontinental Championship versus Intercontinental Championship. He just did great things with it. That's all I can say. And it definitely helped him to get to the status he wanted to be at, and he eventually did become at. But it was he was a very good Intercontinental Champion. Even at one point, he even got his belt back. I think he won it for the 3rd time off Jeff Jarrett as well. So yeah, he did good things with it. Next one was probably one of my favorites, the one and only Macho Man Randy Savage. Again, using the belt to get to the championship. He was supposed to win it back at WrestleMania 4, but it fell through, so they put the WWE title on him instead. And he won it. He won his first Intercontinental Championship from beating Tito Santana. And it just went up from there, basically. It took him to a new level. He took the belt to a new level. He was the workhorse champion. He was definitely a workhorse. No question about it. And if you don't believe me, he was a workhorse champion. Go and watch his match at WrestleMania 3 with Steamboat. Oh, boy. And then all of that, you know, led him to have that breakaway from being a champion, I believe, at that, because he won the belt again at WrestleMania. He won the WWE title at WrestleMania 4 1 year later. Next one is Bret. I've just mentioned Bret beating Perfect, and that's how that kicked off and everything. You know, he had great matches. He had an epic match with Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8. He had a match with, you know, he even had made that belt the show stealer of SummerSlam 1992 when it was him and Bulldog for the championship, and that was the main event of the show. Yeah, he did wonders. And again, another guy that became Intercontinental champion and then eventually went on to become WWE champion. And he was at number 2 in the countdown. But, ladies and gentlemen, at number 1, you cannot deny, and it's an arguable point still, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there would be interested, or a different matter for it. But, yeah, Chris Jericho is number 1, guys. I think he has won it 9 times, if I'm mistaken. 9-time Intercontinental champion. He's the man when it comes to the Intercontinental title. You know, first ever undisputed champion, but he is the measuring stick when it comes to the Intercontinental Championship. 9 times. I don't think anybody's going to be beating that anytime soon, quite frankly. And like I've said many, many times, guys, Jericho is good, full stop. Quite frankly, he is very good, full stop. I can give you a list. I could probably give you the list of who he beat for the Intercontinental Championship, but I think that's a podcast in itself, quite frankly. Because I'm guessing it was the who's who of it. In his first time of winning the Intercontinental Championship, I believe, if I remember this correctly, was at... When did he win it? I believe it was Royal Rumble 2000, if I remember correctly. I believe it was Royal Rumble 2000 when he beat Chyna and Hulk Holly in a triple threat match. I might be wrong on that, but I believe it was that. So, yeah. Chris Jericho, greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. Or the greatest Intercontinental champion ever. It's an arguable point, but hey, I'm not going to argue with it. And there you have it, guys. That about wraps it up for part 4. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll be back in part 5 with Progress Wrestling. So, stay tuned.
If you like the Wrestling Matters Podcast, why not follow the Wrestling Matters Podcast now on Twitter at WM Podcast for all professional wrestling news. Wrestling Matters, wrestling fans.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to part 5 of the Wrestling Matters Podcast. So, apologies for that, I'm a little tired. Now, it's Progress Wrestling time. Yep, Progress Wrestling finally comes to the Wrestling Matters Podcast. Oh, it's back on the Wrestling Matters Podcast. And I managed to watch chapter 36 this past week. Great show, probably their biggest show in their existence. 2,400 people at Brixton Academy watching it, and yeah, it was mental. It was very, very mental. Kicked off with the Atlas titles, the final of the Atlas Championship with Joe Coffey and Rampage Brown. 2 hard-hitting big men. Big men's wrestling. That's what it was. 2 hard-hitting big men. Joe Coffey I've seen many times on ICW, and Rampage I've witnessed him in first hand of what he can do in the ring. He is a monster in its own right. Joe was in control after a very slow start, quite frankly. It was a very slow start to the match. Hard-hitting, very deliberate match. But it was hard-hitting stuff. They got physical with each other. You know, both men kicked out of each other's finishes, which was amazing to the fans. And then Rampage manages to pull Joe off the top rope. I think he counted what Joe was about to do, because Joe was on the top rope and he was like strangling on the top rope, and then Rampage just pulls him off and hits his power driver, spikes him with the power driver, and becomes the very first Progress Wrestling Atlas champion as well, which is the heavyweight division's Atlas championship. So that means, you know, people like Mark Andrews will not be able to get involved. But a perfect fit for a perfect champion fit for the title, in my opinion. And the title was made by the same guy who made the Cruiserweight division, the Cruiserweight title in WWE. So that was, yeah, very interesting. And apparently that guy's got a contract with WWE as well, so shout out to you, sir. 6 women's tag team match, all leading to the first female natural progression series, which I'm very much looking forward to, quite frankly. It had Ginny Dihala Black, I hope I said that right, and Alex Windsor taking on Pollyanna, Laura DiMatteo, and a woman I'm very familiar with because I watch WCPW, Nixon Newell, as well, the very first WCPW Women's Champion. Now, highlight for me in this match, at least one of them anyway, was at the beginning, to be honest. It was actually at the beginning of the show, because, that's right, believe it or not, it ended up having, it's the God's honest truth, guys, Nixon Newell, that's right, Nixon Newell coming out to C'est La Vie. That's right, anybody who remembers Bewitched back in the day, I believe it was Bewitched, the Irish girl group, unbelievable, okay, unbelievable. Actually came out. That was like, to me, Martin Kirby coming out to Dragonstone Dinter, or Grado coming out to Madonna. Never thought that would be pulled off. So credit to Nixon Newell for coming out. Alex Windsor, on the other hand, came out to Katy Perry's E.T., that song she did with Kanye West, and there was a line in the song where, "Kiss me, infect me with your love, and fill me with your poison." I don't think there was anybody in that audience that wanted to do that, quite frankly. They just looked at her like, fuck that, kind of thing. It was just so good to watch. But hey, the girls showed their stuff. The girls showed their stuff in the match. And like I say, it was all leading to the Natural Progression series as well. The first female, I believe it's the very first female Natural Progression series, if I remember correctly, as well, if I'm aware of that. But fair play to all 6 women, and it eventually ended up with, dominated mostly by Ginny's team anyway, WCPW's match start, which was Alex Windsor and Nixon Newell start the match. Great women's match. Another highlight of the match was Ginny hitting the Styles Clash on Laura DiMatteo. Windsor got spiked in the match by a combination that featured Nixon Newell as well. Ginny wins with a top rope X Factor on Laura DiMatteo, but another highlight of the match was a miscue between TJ and D. Hala Black on the out as well, because TJ was going to come in and punch, I think it was Pollyanna, in the face. She ducks, and TJ hits his woman right in the mouth, completely knocking her for a loop, which was just, fantastic in its own right. I genuinely loved that. I really did. I absolutely, genuinely loved that, quite frankly. It was so good to watch. As well, and yeah, Windsor gets spiked, and the miscue, Ginny ends up winning by, like I said, the top rope X Factor. London Riots defended the tag team championships against British Strong Style. Riots bringing their own style to the match as well. Not a tag team match, just a fight. There was a moment of the match where they all sat outside on seats, started slugging away at each other, which was just fantastic. And eventually got down to a tag team title match, which was very unusual. And yeah, it was just a hard-hitting from that point on, quite frankly. A hard-hitting match. James Davis' highlight of the match was a double Samoan drop, having both men on his shoulders, like he was going to give him a Death Valley driver and just dropping him down for some more drop. But a shock, ladies and gentlemen, because a pump kick pile driver combination after a use of a bat, and British Strong Style become the new Progress Wrestling Tag Team Champions. Interesting to see how that pans out, quite frankly. Very interesting to see how that pans out. Paul Robinson and Chuck Mambo, and Paul Robinson manages to get the win. Nothing really big in that match. It was just Paul Robinson coming out whining and complaining that he wasn't on the card. So he managed to get an open challenge and get a match, and he won it. And credit to him. It wasn't really that much in there, to be honest. There was The Origin as well, taking on FSU, Jack Gallagher and Damian Moser. And if The Origin lost, they would have disbanded. It was a great match. Lots of action-packed stuff, fun to watch. And The Origin survived for at least another day. because they ended up getting the victory thanks to Jack Gallagher getting the pin. I think it was Zack who kicked out. Jack goes right in to a cast aerial that Dave Mastiff had in his hand, turns round, Zack hits his finisher and gets the victory and wins it for the Origin. The numbers game was definitely with the Origin in that match. Before that, there was a match, a 2 out of 3 falls match involving Tommaso Ciampa and Zack Sabre Jr. Great wrestling match to kick. Actually, it was just a great wrestling match all round. Feeling out process to kick off, and the advantage went to Zack. And then Ciampa started bringing in his strikes that he had. Zack's story of the match worked on Tommaso's arm, even stamping on it on occasions as well, which I would imagine even hurts than somebody just working on it, for Pete's sake. Stamping on it, it's amazing he didn't break the shoulder. And the first match, or the first fall, ended in a draw. So both men managed to get a fall apiece in this back and forth match, which ended up seeing Zack win by making Tommaso tap out. It was an amazing match. Project Ciampa hit it and Zack kicks out with that. Back and forth stuff. Zack continued to work on the arm for the huge portion of the match. Even at one point, Ciampa hits the pedigree, which I'm sure Triple H was pleased about if he saw that. But best 2 out of 3 falls. Perfect way to end the feud between these two, and perfect way for Ciampa to leave indie wrestling, because that was Ciampa's last match, and he eventually said goodbye to indie wrestling as well after the show. But like I say, good match all around. If you want to see that match, I suggest you go and watch the show, unless they put it on their YouTube channel. Now for the Progress Wrestling Championship. Marty Scurll, Mark Haskins, and Tommy End. Action-packed war for the Progress Wrestling Championship, and it all culminated at this point. Highlight was Mark getting suplexed on the outside through a table. It was a back-and-forth war for the championship, and it was just action-packed stuff. And then at one point in the match, Marty went nuts, started hitting people with the umbrella, including referees. Even at one point was going to go for Jim Smallman, but then hell froze over, and hell returned to Progress Wrestling in the form of one Jimmy fucking Havoc. And I swear to God, the minute his music hit, the place went balmy. It went balmy, just went completely nuts. Unbelievable stuff, and it was just fun to watch, quite frankly. It was just fun to watch, very fun to watch. And yeah, he came in, Raymakered Marty Scurll, and became the downfall for Marty, to be honest with you. And then Marty eventually taps out to a sharpshooter from Mark Haskins, and Progress Wrestling Chapter 36 ended with a new Progress Wrestling champion in the form of Mark Haskins. Just a great show all around, 5 stars. If you want to see a good show, go and watch it. Seriously. Good show, good wrestling, great matches. What more could you ask for? What more could you ask for? Absolutely. It's just amazing what happened. It really was. And yeah, that about wraps it up for this part, guys. That was Progress Wrestling Review, Chapter 36. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back in the final part for an outro and thoughts on Solomonster's little TNA rant that he did, the little TNA segment that he did that I saw this past week, involving Dixie Carter, titled Bound For Bankruptcy. I will be reviewing that and talking about that in part 7. But in part 6, guys, I'm going to go to a quick commercial break, and then when you come back, you're going to listen to part 3 of the match of the interview with Evren Orion. So stay tuned, guys. I am far from done. See you in a bit.
Greetings, Lightworkers. This is Evren Orion speaking to you via transmission. You can find us on the web at Evren Unlocked on Twitter, Instagram, and anywhere else. For Facebook, simply search us, The Collective Being, or Evren Orion, E-V-R-E-N. Orion like the belt. Lightworkers, do us a favor and do check out our Pro Wrestling Tees shop, where you can purchase your Sacred Life t-shirts, the official brand of the collective being. You can also view us at our website, EvrenOrion.com. The link to our PWTs store is just simply ProWrestlingTees.com/EvrenOrion. We thank you and wish you well. Unlock your reality, and we'll see you next time. We are one.
And you won't be drawing all that money as well. That's what promoters fail to realize as well. Have you ever worked with promoters in your time in the ring that have ever there's an old saying, you have to be a prick in this business as a promoter anyway to be to get yourself over, otherwise they're going to walk over. Which is, I've never.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's funny because it's true. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly. But
I don't view it that way. I view it as someone being a leader. Honestly, It's not being a prick. It's running a business.
Exactly.
If you're not doing your job, if the employee is not doing his job or a job, well, then why are you there?
Exactly. But have you ever come across a promoter that you've tried to work with, to you, that's come across as a bit of a dick? Because in a way, and I'm not bashing the guy, I have. I mean,
I'm bashing the guy. Fuck BBW. Can't stand that shit.
Yeah.
So that was the first company I was exposed to that my former tag team partner introduced me to, basically. And I have long hair,
right.
And I take very much pride in my hair. Just a little segue into some history. Native Americans, there's a reason they keep their hair long. It's a spiritual issue, and that's exactly what it is with me. It's all about energies and connecting. So, when you're green and someone's trying... I'm a very strong person, despite all I've been through and all the obstacles I've had to leap over in life. So when someone wants to try and tell me to, cut my hair or do a hair match or a hair versus something match, I'm like, hell no, go fuck yourself. Yeah. Why would I cut my hair for you?
Yeah.
And this guy is also a prick too, because I had the flu really bad, and I had 104-degree fever, and I let him know that morning that I was not allowed to do anything but lay in my bed all day.
Right.
When you have the heart condition that I do, and the rare time that you do get the flu, it's very serious.
Right.
I can easily die from the flu. The chances of me dying from the flu are much, much greater than most other people, even though I keep myself in shape and, my diet's great, healthy, etc. But, he was like, so you can't wrestle? Well, no shit, Sherlock. Why would I go die in a ring for someone who doesn't even have any respect for the people that step in the ring for your shows?
Yeah.
In certain situations, that's why you have an asterisk that says, card is subject to change.
Yes. Yeah,
You have to be prepared for every situation. You don't act like that to people. You're supposed to care about your employees.
Yeah.
And in the moment you stop is when they go. And me, I will walk away every time.
It kind of reminds me
with respect.
Right.
If you don't, bye.
Yeah, right.
It's a mutual thing.
Yeah,
it's not.
It should be a mutual. Yeah, it should be a mutual thing. 50-50 in that should be. It kind of reminds me of somebody I know, a promoter I know in my hometown, EPW, who, don't get me wrong, can do what he does, and he's done very well in what he's done and everything like that. I'll never bash him on that at the end of the day, but he has an ego the size of Middlesbrough. And that's as simple as that, really, because I'll give you some stories, some examples and everything like that, just to make you aware. April 19th, 2014, this was the build-up to my podcast, because my podcast started April 7th of 2014, and a couple of months, or maybe a couple of weeks prior to that, I got a tweet on Twitter. He tweeted me, the promoter, saying, if you mention us on your podcast, you can get into the shows for free. You know, fair deal. Okay.
Yeah.
Come and watch your shows, free wrestling shows. I'm a wrestling fan. I come and watch some free shows and everything like that. Lo and behold, did I realise it was a setup. Because I went there. I went to work that day. I was working that day in Middlesbrough Football Club, the stewarding job that I do. And I told my supervisor and everything, I'm here to take care of business, but when the final whistle goes, I'm out. I gotta go. I gotta go somewhere. So I gotta go to wrestling show the minute I'm done here. So I meet to the final whistle. When that final whistle blows, bye-bye. So I'm out. So he let me go. You know, I did my job, did my thing, earned my money, yada, 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 and left. Went home, came home, got changed, got rid of the suit that I was wearing on the day, got a shower. I went straight to the show. Rainbow Leisure Centre in Middlesbrough, guys. And we went there. I was a little bit early, but I went there just to get a feel of it and everything, and, you know, maybe set up a place as well, because I was there to do podcasting work. And for the minute I walked in the door, he wanted me to wrestle. He was like, are you competing in the Rumble Battle Royal tonight? I said, no, I'm not here to compete. I'm here to, you know, do my podcasting work. Like I say, we made a deal on Twitter. You give me this, this, and this, and I'll give you, I'll give you this, this, and this. You give me A, B, and C back. You know, free shows. You know, no problem. So we walked in, and it was halfway through the show. I was right in front of the merchandise stand, you know, taking notes, watching some great wrestling. No question about it. There were some good matches on the show and everything. And I kept on getting these people, you know, the participants and whoever was in there coming over to me saying, oh, just compete in the podcast. Even his girlfriend or wife or mother of his child, I know she's the mother of his child, no doubt, but, you know, came up to me because she was behind the merchandise stand, right? And she's a sweetheart. She really is. She's a really nice girl, no question about that. And she's always been cool with me, and I've always been cool with her. She comes up to me. Even she was trying to get me involved. I'm like, what the fuck? I came here to do podcasting work, for fuck's sake, you know. And the next minute, I'm in the what to call it? I'm in the Battle Royal. I decided just to shut them up. I'll participate in the Battle Royal. And the next minute, I'm getting my ass kicked by a wrestler called Valcabius, and holding somebody back for Doug Williams to chop, you know, kind of thing. And that's on YouTube, by the way. Just want to let you know. I'll send you the link to that. It was on YouTube, me and my NWO t-shirt. And then there's all these other stuff as well. I mean, Billingham, 2014, I believe it was. I did two things that day. One, I spoke to somebody there who wrestles on his roster, right? Think about that. He wrestles on his roster. He wrestles at his EPW shows, but he has his own wrestling promotion based in Newcastle, England. I believe it's based in Newcastle, England. They've mainly done shows up there in Newcastle, England, and that. And I spoke to him on the show. His name was Mark Anthony. Shout out to you, sir, if you're listening to this. And this is what I didn't get, right? I said to him, because he was getting, at the time, from when I was talking to him, he was getting about 50, 60, maybe 70 crowd show, which is not good, you know, not good on anybody, you know, audience-wise at least. It was drawing 70 people. And I was like thinking to myself, and I spoke to him about it. I said, why'd you come to Middlesbrough? Because there's one thing I've learned about living in Middlesbrough. People love wrestling. You go to a wrestling show in Middlesbrough, wrestling shows, whether at the Town Hall, whether it's at the Rainbow Centre, or wherever else they can get in, they draw a good crowd. There's no question about that. They draw a very, very good crowd at a wrestling show. Close to about 1,000 people, maybe, depending. But it's
pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's a very good. It might be that, it might be less, but at the end of the day, it's a very good crowd.
If you're getting, 200-300 people even in a show, that's great. That's a great starting point.
Yeah,
you can build from that.
Exactly. 50, 60, 70 maybe. No, that's all right. It's something you could build on, but like everyone said there, 200, 300, you're cooking with gas. You're getting somewhere. But I said to him, why did you come to Middlesbrough and all that? And he was like, oh no, the promoter's name is Chris Colley. He goes by the name of Chris Diamond, okay? And I'm just being honest, okay? I'm not bashing you if you listen to this, not whether I give a fuck anyway. You know, I'm not bashing you. I'm just calling it as I see it. This is the story, the things that I've learned. And he goes on, Mark goes to me, oh yeah, it's Chris's town and everything like that. And I called him out about this as well on the on the training session. I said, is this true? And he was like, is what true? I said, you won't let him come here, run shows here, because this is your town, as you say. He said, yeah. Would you be offended if that happened? He went, yeah. And I'm like, what am I living here in the 1970s or something? You know, I mean, that's when I nearly, I basically nearly wanted to walk out the friggin' training session that day, because I thought, I can't be around this guy anymore. You know, it's just ridiculous. I mean, whatever happened to working with somebody?
Well, you know, that all comes down to things like the biggest issue in the world, really, which is ego.
Exactly. That's all it is. And I'm like thinking to myself, I looked at the guy and I'm like, holy shit, you've got an ego the size of Middlesbrough, man. I mean, it's nothing wrong with having an ego in the business, but don't let it go too far. I mean,
in my opinion, you don't have to have an ego to get anywhere.
Exactly.
It's about being a hard worker and busting your ass and loving what you do.
Exactly.
You don't bitch about jobbing. That's your job. You don't bitch about not winning a Rumble. You don't bitch about not coming out to be a #1 contender. You don't bitch about having to drop the title. I mean, seriously.
Exactly. If there's nothing wrong with doing the job.
If it's like, and I'm gonna parrot it because it's true. If it's what's best for a business, do it.
Yeah. I mean, all right. I had issues. That's why I'm not with him today. Because I had issues. He never gave me an opportunity one-on-one. I was basically there. You know, his Royal Rumble punching bag. That's what I was. And that wasn't working for me whatsoever. I mean, I signed up there to get like a one-on-one match with somebody. And I always had this philosophy of trying to get one-on-one matches. Not taking nothing away from most of the guys that were there, because they brought the best out of me in training, no question about that. And I'll put them on a pedestal right now, because he had a good group of people there. And they always brought the best out of me, and I hope I brought the best out of them. But when it came to having big matches on the big show, I always had this philosophy of wanting to work with somebody with experience. You know, like, for example, maybe working with a guy on the indie circuit, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, maybe working like, if somebody like Cody Rhodes was there at that show, all right, I'm nowhere near his level, but working with somebody of that stature who's had more experience in the ring, and is an experienced wrestler, like a Doug Williams, for example. I'm sure you know who Doug Williams is, right?
Yes.
UK ambassador of British Wrestling, former TNA champion in his own right, not the world champion, but he's had most of the belts in TNA. You know, somebody like that. You know, so because I've always felt working with people like that, you can learn from them. You know,
well, that's the thing about wrestling. I mean, yes, you're right, but you never stop learning.
Hey, I never stop learning at my job that I'm doing at the Middlesbrough Steward. I've been doing that 4 years and I'm still learning it. You know, I mean, I know you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, the experience right now and everything, but that's a learning job in itself. Believe you me.
And when I say that, I say that because there are certain people out there who think, oh, well, I got it all figured out. No, the fuck you don't.
No, you never have it figured out. You think you do? No.
You might do something here that didn't work, but you do it in this place and it works like a charm.
Yeah.
It's all those kinds of things. It's feeding off the crowd. It's, you know, if they're dead, and this is why I can't stand the word tweener, because you're eliciting a reaction from your opponent. Trash talking is not reserved to a heel.
Right.
And it's you know, if the crowd's dead or not completely into it, you got to get them into it somehow. It's not always through moves. You have to remember, professional wrestling is an emotional business, an emotional sport.
Yeah.
So you gotta do what you can.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this guy, right? I saw this promoter on that April 19th show that I did. I saw him, you know, reaping the benefits of what happened on that show, because he's sitting behind the counter doing one match. I believe it was a 6-man tag. I'm walking behind, you know, in a way, trying to help out the best I can and whatnot and everything like that. He's sitting behind the counter, counting his money. And let's face it, they weren't pound coins, ladies and gentlemen. Freaking notes. And he had a lot of them in his hand, and he's sitting behind the counter of the merchandise stand, freaking counting them like that. Like he's reaping the benefits, which he was. And he did. And hey, I've even told him this, he did very well that night. He did very well that day. No question about it. But like I say, I mean, I'm not in this... When I created this podcast in 2014, guys, I wasn't in it to compete with people. I'm in it to work with people. Because you never know. I've always felt if you work with somebody, you might get something that you never thought you could get. I mean, if he worked with another promoter... Because that's what I think he's afraid of. And I'll bust this out right now. I think you're afraid of competition. Because there was one other promotion coming here as well. Apparently they faded to black, unfortunately, from what I saw, because they haven't mentioned anything or been around anything or anything like that. You know, they haven't. You know, the word hasn't got to us anymore because I think they faded to black. He found out they were coming here, TWT Wrestling, I think they were called. He thought they were coming here to build themselves into a company themselves. He started shitting himself. Literally, they were panicking on Facebook. I read some of the statuses, and he was like, "When do I need permission from Chris to come here?" Like, that's what you said. That's what the promoter who was trying to get it off the ground and everything was saying. When do I need somebody's permission to come to a place? Like, I mean,
never.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying.
Territories don't exist anymore, buddy.
Exactly. Territories don't exist.
No.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying with Mark Anthony. Could you imagine if he said that to Mark, that he would be offended if he was promoting the stuff here? Well, there was a joke on that. I didn't find it funny to begin with. And last time I checked, jokes are meant to be funny. Right? But could you imagine if he said something like that to a Mark Dallas, who runs ICW, or somebody in Progress Wrestling, or somewhere around about that?
They just railroad.
Exactly. They wouldn't give a toss.
Steamroller here, don't give a shit.
And exactly, they'd be like, "Fuck you, we don't care. We'll come in here, whether you like it or not." You know, and to be honest,
nobody has claim stake. See, exactly. Now, the only difference is if you have a situation like with what happened with me and the promoter, one of the promoters I currently work for, because we're so close to each other, you don't ever want to try and put someone out of business because you're fucking yourself and you're fucking other people.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, it's like you said, it's competition, but you're not out to make people not exist.
Exactly.
And the two people I had partnered with to start my promotion, unfortunately, were trying to do that. And I was not for it. And it led to an issue that is now resolved, but, you know, never tell someone, well, you can't be here because I'm here. Yeah. But, you know, go 30, 45 minutes, an hour away, find another spot, maybe, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's enough distance there that it works.
Absolutely.
But never, ever try to tell someone no, shut them out, or anything else, because what does that do for anyone?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you
creates chaos and introduces issues.
Yeah, absolutely. If they had somebody on, I mean, at the end of the day, you could get that person, if somebody was on their roster that you wanted, that you never thought you could get, if you work with that company, they might be able to say, here, we'll loan you. Yeah, exactly. We'll loan you. That's what I was thinking as well when it first this happened. I was thinking to myself, I came home, walked home, and I was thinking, you know, really thinking about this, you know, going back, and I'm like, he's doing all that. I mean, one of the egotistical twat and everything. I was thinking to myself, why can't he cross promote? Do a show together, and, you know, help him out that way.
Because people are too afraid to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. Afraid of competition. He's obviously afraid of competition. He's afraid somebody might come up to him and compete with him and want to put him out of business, which, in a way, would be fair enough. But like I say, why would people do that? You know, at the end of the day, because if you're there to put somebody out of business, you're fucking yourself over more than the other people. At the end of the day, and I mean, I just couldn't believe the guy. I mean, he offered me to come back he sent me a message on Twitter saying, not Twitter, I believe it was Facebook, saying that we're having shoot interviews. Would you want to come back and, you know, and host these shoot interviews and that? And if it had been any other day, I'd have said yes. And I was tempted to say yes. But I turned it down, and I turned it down for one simple reason. Because we always get into an argument. At some point, we always end up getting, like, his philosophy on wrestling and my philosophy on wrestling are two different things. Let's just call it like that. And I couldn't be asked going back to it and think, oh, I'm not going to go back there again and get into a fucking argument with him. You know,
right.
It's not worth the time. It's not worth the effort. It's not worth the place.
Nope.
It's not worth my time.
The stress either.
Not worth the stress at all. So unless you never know, we might cross paths down the road again. And if he wants me back, then he's gonna have to come up with something that we both can win on. You know, because at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this because I want an opportunity to say that I did some wrestling. At the end of the day, do I expect to be in the WWE or TNA or whatever? No. I just want to be able to say I did that. I did something similar to what the people on the said, because it's more fun that way, and I'm a fucking fan, for crying out loud. But at the end of the day, if somebody is egotistical as that, it's not worth being around him. You know, it's not worth the stress. So get away from it while you still can.
Be sure to check out the Wrestling Matters channel at www.youtube.com/AJW Wrestling Matters for my exclusive review series that I'm doing on WCPW, What Culture Pro Wrestling, brought to you by the good folks at WhatCulture.com. Each and every week I'll be reviewing their shows, whether it's loaded or their big upcoming shows as well, each and every week on their YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the Wrestling Matters channel for review shows each and every week. You can also download them for free on SoundCloud. Wrestling Matters, wrestling fans. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 7th and final part of the Wrestling Matters podcast. Now, you can listen to this podcast on Swerve Talk Network, like I say, quick reminder, guys, Max Wrestling, Kenny Killer, Sunday Segway, Evan McCabe's podcast, and Offshoot Radio as well. Be sure to check them out each and every week. You know it makes sense. Also, for more information on Flash Morgan Webster coming to Mystery Island and the shop and everything else Mystery Island related, even their little wrestling show they're doing at the back end of November, be sure to check out facebook.com/back to the island as well. Also, you can listen to the Wrestling Matters podcast on youtube.com/AJW Wrestling Matters. Subscribe if you're over there as well. And soundcloud.com/wrestling_matters_podcast. Maybe my websites. I'm still working on my websites at the moment. I don't know. There's something not quite clicking with them at the moment. I'm trying to figure that out. Also, the odd occasion on Spreaker.com. Now, and also, it may very well be coming back to Mixcloud. I'm thinking about it. Also, but you can listen to the Wrestling Matters podcast, everything you goes. Now, it's time for the main event of this podcast, ladies and gents. Hope you've enjoyed the previous ones. Hope you enjoyed that Intercontinental Championship countdown as well from What Culture. Yeah. And the Evren Orion interview as well. Now, little thing here, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for that Solomonster interview. The podcast that he did that I saw about him and TNA. Now, I will leave this in the description below. You have to check this out, guys, to get a full clarification on it. It was called Bound For Bankruptcy. Was TNA's mess created by Dixie Carter? Well, flat out, yes, it was. And he talked about certain things as well, and I've got some of the points that he talked about which interest me. If you want to listen to the whole podcast segment, it's about 20 minutes long. Go and listen to it. It's in the description below. I will put it there. It'll be at the top of the description below. Big shout out to Solomonster, and big shout out to you, sir, as well. Big shout out to Solomonster. Big shout out to him for what he does as well. He actually did a very good job with this as well. This wasn't on his YouTube channel. This was on his podcast, but it was on the TV Tracks channel as well, YouTube channel. Like I say, video will be in the description below. This was going into Bound for Glory. Apparently, the whole thing that came about with Billy Corgan becoming TNA president and Dixie Carter dropping down, TNA had no money.
and Billy Corgan, being the smart dude that he is, he agrees to buy in and becomes president. You know, put his money involved as well. Which is fair enough, because let's face it, TNA's big downfall in their career is definitely money, which I'll get to more later on. Now, with that happening, we all know that was announced. It was announced that Billy Corgan would step in as president, and yada, yada, yada. Now, I did not know this. I assumed that Dixie would leave. This is why this was so good, because I assumed Dixie left. You know, she was like slowly fading out and going out, basically out the fucking front door. But apparently not. Because apparently Dixie still owns 70% of it. Now, that's the company. The creative she has fuck all to do with. She has nothing to do with. But she still owns 70% of the company, which is fair enough. TNA could not fund the shows, which was Bound for Glory. And eventually they did. I'll get to that in a second. And Billy Corgan stopped putting his money in. And it says the only way he's going to inject more money into this company, of his own money, by the way. This is Billy Corgan's money, not Daddy's money or whatever. He said the only way he was going to do that if he was going to get 100% control of the company. That means the company was his, and he would do that as well. Also, there was a bit where he was talking about WWE being interested in TNA. That's a foregone conclusion. Apparently, they're interested in buying the video library. I don't think they want TNA brand itself, which wouldn't make any use to them anyway, because they'd only end up doing what WCW does and taking the talent. So it makes no sense in buying that brand anyway. And plus, at the moment right now, it's just not a brand, to be honest. But yeah, we all know it was a foregone conclusion. Even the New York Post as well caught on to it, that TNA is... Well, WWE was interested in buying TNA, or one of them anyway. There was a lot of parties interested in buying TNA. WWE was definitely one of them. Solomonster says TNA is a poison brand, and Billy Corgan plans to rename it. Apparently, if Corgan gets control of it, he plans to rename the brand. Apparently, Billy has a vision for it. He was on the podcast shooting about this as well, and yeah, he says he has a vision with it. He says he has a vision with that as well. So, yeah, I mean, if he takes over, then fair enough. You know, give it some stability. Change the name if you have to. Do what you got to do to get this credible company back to where it was again. Or at least back on that right path. Because let's face it, TNA's number one priority has been financial money. Okay? Everything else is, you know, a get-go. But TNA's big problem has been financial money. It's been fucking foregone conclusion. TNA says he can't. Billy says he can't compete, or at least Solo says that Billy can't compete. He's made that piss crystal clear. No one can compete with Vince McMahon. If Vince McMahon comes in, boom, he's lost. No problem whatsoever. Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. No one can compete with Vince McMahon. Billy Corgan can't compete with Vince McMahon, for crying out loud. So even he's smart enough to realise that. TNA is in debt, which is what's basically led to this. They have no money. Or they've had no money, and they still got pending lawsuits on them as well, which is mainly all cause of Dixie. Dixie's to blame on it. Apparently one of the lawsuits was from Eric Bischoff, apparently, as well. But it's all, you know, Dixie's to blame of all this. The wrestlers don't even know what's going on. It wouldn't be surprising. But the fact that, if this is the case, the fact that the wrestlers don't know what's going on, but they have to get word and get information from guys like Dave Meltzer and PWI and that, because they want to know what the hell is going on. The fact that they have to do that is pretty ridiculous, quite frankly. TNA is, apparently Dixie, from the sense that Solomonster got, what he was saying was apparently Dixie and Billy Corgan do not, you know, like each other, or don't have a very good popular like for one another. That's what he gets out of this anyway. And, you know, it's hard not to argue. There is some mumbo-jumbo going behind there as well. WCW and ECW is still popular than TNA because people still want and long for the days of WCW and ECW, which is true. You know, people don't give a flying fuck about TNA anymore. Not like they used to anyway. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, Dixie's to blame. There was the late payments, Russo's. the Russo problems. You know, apparently she had this soft spot for Vince Russo and being on the creative team and that. I don't know why. I mean, Jim Cornette can give you a better dealing of that. But apparently she had a very soft spot for Vince Russo. We all know that. It's well documented. And some of the creative stuff and everything. Hell, she even brought Hogan and Bischoff in. Look where that ended up. Apparently at one point she was so close to bringing in Paul Heyman. But apparently Dixie didn't want to give Paul Heyman what he wanted, which was probably control of the company at that time as well, and just allow him to do his thing. But she didn't want to do that. That's why that deal fell through. Like I said, money problems as well. The amount of time she's had to fire people, like Luke Gallows, for example, just to cut costs. That's why he ended up leaving Aces and Eights the way he did, because he was leaving TNA. You know, it's just it's mainly all Dixie's fault at the end of the day, and apparently she's holding this place hostage, because I'll give you some examples of it. At one point, Toby Keith and Jeff Jarrett wanted to buy, even pulled out of a deal they were trying to make with her and her dad. And the deal was they wanted full control of the company, but Dixie, you know, they had to get Dixie involved. They were only going to accept it if Dixie was involved on television and whatnot. And Toby pulled out of it straight away like that, because that wasn't part of the deal. Somehow, like I said, they ended up getting funds for TV tapings as well. The talent seems to be behind Billy Corgan as well, which is fair enough. The guy's got a vision for it, let him do it. But it seems, like I say, it seems Dixie's holding on to this hostage, if you will. But yeah, I mean, all she has to do is let go. Maybe she can get a good chunk of money from Vince McMahon and let it go. But Dixie's holding on to this, and she's even made it clear now. This was recorded, by the way, this podcast was recorded before Bound for Glory, or Bound for Bankruptcy as he calls it. So things might be a little bit different now. But it was a good little segment, and it seems that she's holding this hostage, and she doesn't want to let go, which, to be honest with you, just sell it to Billy Corgan and let him rename the brand. But the main thing that I got from this, which kind of intrigued me, which I didn't know about, all this time that she got kicked, when TNA got kicked off Destination America, apparently I got word that it was because of ratings, which was fuss. But apparently, from what I got from listening to Solomonster here, TNA got kicked off Destination America because apparently she took some of the emails from Destination America's team and practically insulted them. So that led to Destination America kicking them off the network. Oh man, you wonder why, don't you? But at the end of the day, I've said this about TNA. TNA is WCW back in the early 90s. The only thing is, they weren't losing money. Apparently they have no money, and they're lucky to get money at the moment anyway, to try and fund in the TV tapings, and apparently they've already funded the TV tapings anyway. So they're lucky to get that in at the moment. But like I said, TNA is WCW back in the day, early 90s, before Bischoff got out of it. Except TNA weren't losing $80 million a year at the time. Like I said, before Bischoff got out of it. But yeah, that's TNA for you, man. I mean, it's a shame that TNA has gone to this spot. I mean, I remember back in the day, weekly pay-per-views, back when Jeff was running it and all that stuff, and they've gone all the way from that to this. And the thing is, the thing that pisses me off, if I was on TNA's main roster, I'd be fuming right now, wanting to know what the hell is going on, because they don't know if they've got a job still. Yes, they've got the money. They founded Bound for Glory. Bound for Glory's been and gone. They've got money to scrounge off the TV tapings they've got as well, but they don't know what direction they're going in. Most of the guys don't even know they still have a job, which is mind-boggling to me, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it's basically all Dixie's fault, and I think she's even realizing that now. I just don't think she wants to let go. But to be honest, she should let go. Let it go and give it to Billy Corgan. Let him rename the brand, whatever the heck he was going to do. He seems like he's already put his 2 cents in bringing in that Impact Grand Championship, for crying out loud. But, just let it go, Dixie. Let Billy Corgan take this to a new level, because it seems that Billy has a vision for it, of what he wants to do. It's just getting past Dixie. Once he can convince Dixie to give it to him and let him run riot with it, everything will be cushy. But getting that from Dixie, talking to Dixie, is like talking to a brick wall at the end of the day. And like I say, the money state and everything, it's probably the reason why TNA are in the state they're in. Ladies and gentlemen, one word, one name, Dixie Carter. But like I say, it's a crying shame at the end of the day where TNA has gone to. But let's hope things work out for them. Do I see it happening, honestly? Nah. But like I say, we'll see what happens at the end of the day. But be sure to check out that 20 minutes podcast segment from Solomonster. It's in the description below. It is worth a listen. Trust me, I loved it. Actually, it's so good, so brilliantly done. I like to say there was a few facts in there, there's a few information in there that even I didn't even know about. So, because like I say, I assumed Dixie had gone, but apparently she still owns 70% of the company. And plus that little thing about Destination America as well, which I didn't know about. Because I got told that they left Destination America because of low ratings. And I thought Destination America royally fucked them over, but which they didn't. To be honest, they didn't. So, hey, it is what it is at the end of the day. So, at the end of the day, TNA is down the toilet at the moment. There's my little thing there. TNA is absolutely down the toilet, and you've got to understand this, guys. They're in a hole. Not that these schmucks that I talked to on the internet once a time, who are so obsessed, I don't want to hear the truth about TNA. Basically, the TNA mocks. But TNA, guys, is really in a hole. A hole they can't get out of. Or looks that the way they can't get out of. Unless Dixie agrees to do what's best for TNA. I mean, she could have done it a long time ago with the Toby Keith and Jeff Jarrett thing. Again, it's like I said, guys, she didn't want to let go. But like I say, if you want to get more information out of this, you want to get more depth about it, go and listen to that podcast, that 20-minute segment, because it is very good. And that about wraps it up for the podcast, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Episode 132. Tune in next time for another episode of the Wrestling Matters podcast. Wrestling Matters Wrestling Podcast. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe if you listen to this on YouTube. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.
Well, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. Professional wrestling, this is it. This is us standing up. Yes, 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 yes. That's 13-14. Make it till death.
Dina, I am the best in the world.
Cause that's the bottom line. Cause Stone Cold Simpson.